بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بداية نشكركم على الحضور. We're going to talk about the Chinese monetary policy and we're going to compare it to the US monetary policy. We're really happy to have the Chinese embassy here. Hopefully it's going to be informative. It's going to be short, but before starting, we'd like to give you a background about the Kuwait and the Chinese relationship with our expert, Sheikha Dr. Anud al-Sabah. So I'm going to give a little background about each person, and if there's something I missed, you can add to it. Dr. Sheikha Anud Ibrahim al-Sabah, she's an academic researcher, master's in Chinese studies, with 17 years of experience in the work field of international relationship and security in several governmental institutes. She published several publishings, China-Kuwait relations, along with GCC-Brazilian relations and public policy. She has attended many international conferences, and mashallah, she speaks 4 languages along with Arabic, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Chinese. So the presentation is going to start with Anud, but before we start with Dr. Anud, we're going to give a little background of Monsieur Dr. Maxime. Dr. Maxime is from the Associate Researcher at the European Institute of Development Studies, and now you are part of the HERSP program in Kuwait. His bachelor degrees, master degrees, along with their PhD degree, all of them are in economics. So today it's going to be a little bit deep, but it's going to be interesting. And so we're going to start with Dr. Anud. Dr. Anud, the floor is yours. I'm not going to give an introduction because Anud will take the floor in that.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone.
Anud, Dr. Anud, your
distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be here with you today to speak about a topic dear to my heart. I worked on 4 years of research on China-Kuwait relations, and one of the key pillars of the Kuwait-Chinese relations is the economic pillar. And to be more frank about it, from the end of 1960s until today, China and Kuwait had a bilateral trade, and China was one of the countries that Kuwait seek to be important for Kuwait's economy from 1969 till today. So how did that happen? It started with petrochemical and fertilizers sales to China, and post 1993 this has been translated into our energy bilateral relationship, which is key to our economic exchange. Furthermore, most of you know that China and Kuwait have also a relationship in investment, and Kuwait has invested a lot in China through the Kuwait Fund for Economic Arab Development from 1982 until 2023. And why is this important? Because all these investments have led to what we know today as the strategic partnership, and also Kuwait is a joint partnership with China and Tunisia and creating the petrochemical company in the 1985-1986 also gave floor to what we call today the South-South cooperation. So this is an important relationship because of history and the continuity of the bilateral relations. Now we talk about the numbers. Behind me you can see the bilateral trade that has moved from 2013 to $12.5 billion to $22.39 billion, which means there was an increase of about 79%. These numbers are good indicators that this relationship is important, not only that it's our #1 trade partner since 2015, but also we have been working in parallel in other economic aspects. We provide China with 3 to 4% of their oil imports. We're considered to be the 9th, and of course this fluctuates towards more than once or twice a year. Sometimes we're 8, sometimes we're 9, sometimes we're 10, sometimes we're 3, sometimes we're 4%, sometimes we're 5%, but more or less this is the average. Chinese companies have investments with around $540 million in Kuwait. As we see, there are many Chinese companies here partnering with Kuwait in its development and sustainable development. We have also investments in in Chinese stock exchange in both Hong Kong and mainland China, with more than $1 billion. Kuwait's investment in China is more than $10 billion in many different sectors. We don't have more information about that, but in general, we have fields of cooperation that are very evident, which is energy, renewable energy, digital economy, which is very important, infrastructure, communication, and there are more, but these are the main. And I feel that Kuwait is still committed to the support of the sustainable development of China, and China is still committed to the development of Kuwait 2035. And we're waiting to see, as many people have asked, Mubarak Port, the North Economic Project, and we aspire.
That was my next question, Dr. Hanoud. The Mubarak Port, if we could have some more information about that, yes.
Actually, since it was an ongoing project that started more than 10 years ago, the port has been built with a different perspective, and now it has changed in the past few 6-7 years into a different project, and now we have milestones with the new government's perspective. There are many visits now to China, and there were 2 delegations from China to Kuwait to speed up the process of Mubarak Port. So I'm very hopeful, inshallah, that you will see movements. To give floor to my colleagues, talk about the monetary policies, I just like to shed light on the Chinese economic performance and why is it important. Of course, most of you know that China has grown 5%, 5.3% in 2023, and is projected to grow 5% in 2024. Although the IMF has their own projections of 4.6, we believe that 5 seems to be a good number.
Even 4.6 is it's a good growth with current market.
Yeah. And digital economy is one very important aspect of China's economic growth, because it represents around between 30 to 40% of its economic performance. Right behind me, you can see that the agriculture has 7% of their GDP growth. The industry is around 38.5%. Services is like 54.8%. And this is an example of a chart of a developed economy.
Yeah.
So these are the factors that I would like to share.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hanoud. I think you gave us a very good ground to go to the next, when we go to Dr. Maxime. You gave us a good background on the Kuwaiti and the Chinese relationship, and we can tell that this goes back more than like 5 decades, and even more than that. Ground on their economy, how big it is, what it is, and the main grounds of that. But now we're going to go into a different direction, Monsieur Maxime, Dr. Maxime. Okay, so how we're going to start within the Chinese and the US monetary policies.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this very interesting presentation, Hanoud. I will focus on my presentation on the monetary policy and a comparison between the US and the Chinese one. But of course it is connected to every indicators you showed in your presentation. Oh, it's okay. So only a few slides tonight to present you, but this is actually not short from myself. It is it has been done by Goldman Sachs research, but it is interesting anyway. So this is the Fed balance sheet, so the Central Bank of the United States balance sheet during many years, since 2007 to 2021. So on the top of the chart, you have the assets, and on the bottom, you have the liabilities. Because as you may know, assets and liabilities in any accounting are always equal. So what is important to see on that graphic is the evolution of the assets, notably. Because what we see is the effect on the Federal Reserve balance sheet of the quantitative easings. Yeah. So it began in 2008, 2009, as you can see, a big increase of every kind of claims in the Federal Reserve Assets balance sheet.
So just to confirm that, the 2008, the change that is, and we can see in the top part of the graph, the loans and liquidity swaps are due to the quantitative easing
exactly.
that have been done by the Federal at that time.
Yeah, exactly. This is the point. This is the effect, the concrete accounting effect of the quantitative easing, the first one.
Yeah.
So at the time, the Fed purchased some of claims in the accounting of bank who was risky, and this was loans and liquidity swaps, notably. After that, they continued their purchasing program, but they do it with MBS, which is mortgage-backed securities. So it has become the main asset in their accounting, with the UST, the US Treasuries, which are actually the public debt of the US. They purchase it on the secondary market to avoid the crisis. So as we can see, this movement continued notably in 2012, 2013, and also during the COVID crisis, a big increase of every claims in the accounting of the Fed. Okay. If we compare now with the balance sheet of the People's Bank of China, which is the central bank of the China, we see something very different, actually, and very interesting. So the logical of the graphic is the same. We have assets in the bottom, liabilities, assets on the top and liabilities on the bottom. And but what we can see is a very different thing, because the most important thing in this is the same period, 2007, 2021. But the most important assets in the People's Bank of China balance sheet is the foreign exchange reserves, which are reserves accumulated by the central bank because of the Chinese surplus, commercial surplus. And
so if we could say again, so one of the main differences between both balance sheets is that the reserves are much higher within the Chinese bank, which gives it more solidity, let's say?
Exactly. Yeah. They have a big quantity of reserves because of their commercial surplus. So, and you have also in more negligible quantity other assets, of course, like claims on non-banking financial institutions and claims on government. But as you can see in that graphic, it is a less unstable, more progressive quantity of assets developing in the Chinese central bank than in the Fed. Very interesting is to observe the change which occurred in 2014, because the foreign exchange reserves level began to stabilize, we could say, and to decline a little bit. And it has been replaced actually in the accounting of central bank by claims, direct claims on banks issued by the central bank. So actually this is, in my opinion, beginning of, or could you say,
in front, okay.
Yeah, the beginning of more autonomous monetary policy by the Chinese central bank. And inside these claims on banks, we have very interesting things. And the most interesting thing, in my opinion, is a program which is called AFRE, which is aggregate financing of real economy, which allows to People's Bank of China to finance many things, to invest, but in a framed way, in regional development, in ecology as well, and in many different interesting areas. So I hope it is legible for everyone. But
yes, I think it's okay.
So you have the Fed in the bottom and the People's Bank of China, and you can see I think the instability of the Federal Reserve balance sheet, because they are forced to act as a firefighter to answer the financial crisis. Why? Because they know a process of financialization which is more important than in China, because still they have a bigger financial markets than in China, but it has unstable wall on the production system. And their monetary policy is a firefighter monetary policy. That of China is more thought on the long term with the objective of Chinese planification.
Dr. Maxime, can we elaborate further? What do you mean by, or the word means a firefighter strategy?
Yeah.
What do they exactly do? If you can elaborate further, like,
of course.
They're reactive rather than constructive, let's say?
Exactly, that is the point, because they are fearing.
If you can give us an example of one of the periods during that.
The best example is a period of financial crisis,
okay.
Because they created a quantitative easing to avoid the financial crisis to become worse.
Yeah.
So that's typically a firefighter action. Strategy. And I'm not trying to say that it was bad action, because it was necessary at the time. But the problem is it's big injection of liquidity in the system, which is not planified.
Unsustained.
Yeah.
It's unsustained.
Yeah. It is an answer, but not a reflection.
Yeah.
I think. A planification, like in the Chinese system. I think so. And also, an important point is that the monetary action of the Chinese central bank is connected with the Chinese institution. So mainly.
What do you mean? Why it's connected with the Chinese institutions?
Because it's a declination of the objectives of the National Congress of the Communist Party of China and the Central Committee of the party, and also the Central Economic Work Conference. So it is a declination of Chinese decision process institution. And I think it is good, because it's a good way to think about what you are doing.
Yeah. So if I could wrap it up, is that it's more of constructive way in the Chinese monetary policy, where it is more predictable and more long-term sustained.
Exactly.
And the objectives are in line both with the government and the financial institutes, where the objectives are all met at the end of the same point.
Exactly. This is what I want to say. Thank you.
So, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the point I wanted to show you tonight. I will stop, and my last slide is about the inflation, because it is important to understand that the monetary policy of China, which is very dynamic, is not creating any inflation. So you had inflation during the COVID crisis, of course, but since that period, inflation has become near to zero. Today, it's 0.4%, I think, in annual term. And in the US, it's still above 2%, I think. So in China, you have a very dynamic and, in my opinion, clever monetary policy, but you don't have inflation. And in the US, you have a firefighter monetary policy, but you have inflation, actually. And the same observations you could say about GDP evolution, because now China has a very good GDP per capita in terms of purchasing power parity, and is actually becoming the first. And because of its good productivity, and again of that productivity gains are allowed thanks to their investment policy, which is thought in the long term, I think. So, as concluding remarks, I have nothing to say more that I already said, so just important to understand that this monetary policy of both countries are determinant for the future of world economy. And of course, it's important to understand that the financial markets are still more bigger in the US, but the instability of them is a very key problem for the future.
Thank you. I have one more question. I don't know if you can answer this or not. Last week we heard about the Chinese government program for 3 months to sustain the real estate and the financial institutes with like $350 billion. So what is your reflection on that?
To sustain, what did you say?
To sustain it. Don't you think 300 billion is a huge number for 3 months, and to sustain it, is it possible to be sustained, or you think there will be more cash to be injected in order to reach those GDP growth?
No, I think it's good to do it, but again, the scale is different in China and in the US.
How?
Because the US economy is more financialized. So
more what?
I mean,
finalized, yeah.
Yeah. Financial. There are more financiarization. I don't know which words I could use, but the financial markets are bigger in the US. This is a key problem.
Well, for that, I think we're done. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to open questions a little bit earlier.
Good evening, all. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Iman Al-Arbash. I'm a TA at Kuwait University in the finance department. Regarding to the monetary policy of China, I was going through the plans of the Chinese government, which was clear since the start of the war between Russia and the European Union, or we can say that led to a change in the plan of the Chinese government. We can see that since 2022 November, China started to bought gold in tons that moved their reserve of gold from 1,984 ton to 2,265 ton in April, and we expect that they will continue doing this. That related to what happened between US and Europe by the punishment for Russia lead China to take some actions to protect themselves from being suffering from the same things that happened to Russia. And I think that is one of the things that they are leading the central bank, the public central bank of China, to shift their reserve, and their reserve have been reaching a very high level that it was 1.2 trillion in 2018, and they decreased it to 775 million in February. So, and I think they are continuing to decrease their level of reserves of foreign currencies in order not to be under the punishment or under the management of the US monetary decisions that may affect their economy. So I think the thing that was clear in the chart that you show also is the decline of the reserves of the Chinese, the fixed reserve. It is one of the reasons, which is the increase of the gold.
Gold, yeah.
So, and that was also the reason of the increase of the price of the golds during the last period. I think this is one of the things that maybe is affecting their monetary policy, and they are doing very well in planning and taking lessons from the history of other countries, which is something to appreciate their actions.
Thank you so much, Stada. I think your input is very great. I think this is the first time that I realized to link between the gold and the reserves, how the decrease in that.
Actually, another
and
thing.
as you are an expert in gold, so it's nice.
Maybe also one more thing is that in China they have a problem in their real estate sector, and also in their market, which is the stock market of China. So the people of China, they have the nature to reserve their money in real estate, and when they start to lose the trust on real estate, the second thing that they like to invest their money on is the gold. If you look at the gold in the world, you can see that more than 58% of the gold in the world, in the jewelry, is bought through China and India. Also in the coins and in the other kind of jewelry, they are buying more than 48% of that. That was before, and now because of the real estate problem and because of the financial market problem of the stock market in China, the people tend to buy more and more. Plus, their government, as a central bank, they don't want to be under the pressure of any punishment of Europe and US. So when they found out what happened with Russia, they start to buy lots of gold for the central bank, and because they don't want to throw a lot of their bonds, the US bond, they don't want to sell a lot of it in one time. For 18 continuous months, they are selling the bonds of the US. Okay, and in the other side, they are buying gold. So this is one of the things that you can see in the FX reserve, that it declined.
It's a very interesting angle that you have mentioned, to link this the gold into the reserves and the treasury, the U.S. Treasury bonds.
First of all, good evening, and the presentation was 8 minutes plus, I would say, short and brief, which makes it more interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
And the thing is about the gold, and what we're seeing is the BRICS meeting next, I believe, October 20th in Tashkent.
Mm-hmm.
I read an article today regarding India's opting out, not for BRICS currency anymore. They don't want BRICS currency because, and this is the statement there, it says, it's BRICS currency right now serves, they need dollars, but BRICS currency, a potential BRICS currency only serves China's interest. That's it.
That's the statement they had.
Oh yes, I can show the statement one of that. The other thing on gold, that's of course accumulation of gold, which is whether they have jumped to over 2,000 tons of gold reserve, maybe to 4,000, because China doesn't exactly declare its states exactly its holding of gold. Some speculate up to 4,000 tons, relative to the United States 8,000 tons plus. And Germany is approximately 4,000. But anyway, the gold prices movement is the demand, global demand, whether it is, and mainly whether by governments or by individuals, because there is only the gold reserves in the earth is limited to 50,000 tons of gold reserves, non-reserves right now, versus the silver 530,000 tons. And so the mining of gold and silver in 16, 17 years from now, as it goes on, it will be depleted as the known reserves right now. And the countries probably, in my opinion, will probably result not just the gold to add to the reserves, but silver, which used to be before 1860 as the reserves of Bank of England then at that time. So this is my just added comment about the gold and BRICS, which was interesting today about Indian statement.
Thank you so much. Really interesting. I don't know if we have. Yes, we have.
Thank you. I think this topic is very interesting and very attractive, and thanks to Kuwait Economic Society for holding this event. And as said, the presentation by the two speakers are very short, but very informative. Thanks for your sharing and your efforts on the research on these topics. China and Kuwait has a long-term friendship and economic cooperation. Even now, both countries are the very firm defenders and active practitioners of economic globalization. As you know, the economic recovery is good, but not as good as we expected. So I think all the countries are united together for a better economic recovery. Just now, some shared us the economic development of China over the past decades. China's economic development is at a comparatively very high speed. Nowadays, the economic development speed is lower compared with the previous years, but our government pay more attention to the high quality development. And we understand that the Chinese economic development has met some challenges now, and even during the past years, Chinese economic development is Chinese economy is developing or has been developing when facing different kinds of challenges and difficulties. Just now, a friend said there are some problems of the real estate in the real estate sector. Yes, that's what we face. And in July of this year, China held a very important meeting, a conference, and we focused on the high quality development and Chinese modernization. And by the end of September and early of this month, October, the respective ministries, including National Development and Reform Commission, Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank, had introduced a series of policies to add impetus to the economic development. I think which can benefit for the future development of Chinese economy that I want to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Shashi, I work for KPMG. I have a question for you, Dr. Maxime, and I'm sorry to put you on spot for this.
But as an
you can totally dodge this question, but as an economist, I want to understand your prediction for the next 3 to 6 months, top 3, if Mr. Trump is re-elected in November, how the world looks like.
I'm not sure to understand.
Okay,
So,
if Mr. Trump wins
If
the
Mr.
election,
Donald Trump is re-elected in US, is the
Yeah,
next president of US, what are your top
prediction?
3 to 5 prediction for the world economy, economy in Kuwait or Middle East in
Yeah.
particular?
okay, if Mr. Trump is elected, right?
Yeah, if
Yeah,
Donald
but
Trump is
what
is
your
the
outlook
next,
on the economy?
yeah.
It's
Okay. I don't know as everyone, but I think both of candidates can produce some instability. But what they will do in the financial market and financial crisis, it's difficult to say. It's very difficult to say. It will depend of their personality, of their knowledge, of their decision at the very moment. So I don't know. Of course, it could create some fears on markets if Mr. Trump is elected. I don't know, but it's so unforeseeable, you know, as many things in finance. But in the long term, I have to say I'm not sure Mr. Trump will be so bad for financial markets because of many reasons, which will be very long to explain. But the main thing is the unforeseeability of it, to be honest.
Thank
I
Thank
have
you for your question.
A comment
Yes,
on
please.
that. Thank you, Shashi, for that. You always challenge our thoughts. On Trump, I believe that in the economy, from a personal perspective, one, he will work on creating more stability in the US market. However, in the world market, there will be more confrontation with China, and there will be more sanctions with other countries, and I think it will be unpredictable, but I don't have a very positive outlook on that, because we've faced Trump before,
Yes.
and we've seen how that could cause a little bit, I would like to say, one, supply chain issues. Two, we will have more inflation.
Yes.
Some countries, yes, some countries won't. And I think there will be more Russia issue and more of China's issue. And as a colleague here said about the sanctions, I think we will have to deal with new, I mean, I wouldn't say conflicts, but new tensions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming over. I think we're done with that. I hope you had an informative session, and indeed we had one, and interesting, really challenging to compare the two. Thank you so much for everyone, and see you next time with our next event, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you.